How's it going, guys? My name's Shane, and welcome back to another episode of the Horror Basement. Today we're going to be talking about The Craft from 1996. Now, this movie follows a group of four high school age girls who get involved in witchcraft. Our main character is named Sarah, and she is the new student moving from San Francisco down to LA. And quickly she falls in with our other three witches. The leader of which is Nancy, who is played by Fairuza Balk, who is taking the goth 90s aesthetic to its natural conclusion. The other two are Bonnie, who is played by Neve Campbell from the Scream series, and Rochelle, who is the one on the swim team, or just being honest, she's the black one of the three of them. So the three of them have already started pursuing witchcraft, but they need a fourth girl or a fourth person to fill out the circle, so they can call like the four directions or earth, fire, air, and water, or that kind of magical stuff. But there are other people who also take interest to Sarah as she arrives. The main one being Chris, who is the quarterback and captain of the football team, and he immediately, takes a liking to Sarah and decides that he's going to pursue her romantically. But after the first date, he pretty much gives up and just tells everyone that they fucked so he can get clout with his buddies. But Sarah starts hanging out with this group, and they do some shoplifting and they run around 90s LA. But then it's the time to actually start the witchcraft portion of the movie. So they go out and form the circle and do a ritual of some kind, to which they're asking of Manol, which is like this pantheistic nature deity that they derive their witch power from. And each of them wishes for something different from Manol. Rochelle wishes for strength because she's getting bullied by some like Valley Girl bitches on the swim team who are like super racist. Bonnie wishes for beauty because she's self-conscious because she has like burn scars or something else covering like half of her body. That's why she stays like covered up. And Sarah wishes for like self-love and self-confidence, that kind of thing. And Nancy, being the power-hungry one of the group, wishes for all the power of Manol. Now, unsurprisingly, given this is a movie about witches, this actually works. And they all kind of get their wish in a roundabout way. Laura, the girl that was bullying Rochelle, her hair starts to fall out, like to where she's pretty much going to be bald here directly, and it turns her into like a social pariah. So Rochelle gets her revenge. Bonnie's scars all actually go away. So we get a more scantily clad Neve Campbell for the rest of the movie. Chris, who had initially blown Sarah off, is now like madly in love with her and is basically her like whipping boy. She can, has him wrapped around her finger. And Nancy is initially pissed because no magic shit seems to be happening to her. But then her stepdad and her mom get into a fight and she starts freaking out and shit starts flying around. And either from the shock or from Nancy directly, her stepdad like has a heart attack and keels over. And of course they inherit a bunch of money because he had this big life insurance policy. So all the girls are feeling pretty good right now, and are continuing to take it further and further with the magic until finally they decide to invoke the spirit of Manol. So they bring a bunch of animals and candles and shit down onto a beach, and they're doing the ritual. There's a bunch of like fast editing of crazy shit going on. And at the end of the ritual, Nancy actually gets struck by lightning, and they all kind of pass out or whatever. And when they wake up, Nancy is walking on water out in like the waves and walks on water back to the beach where they are. So it's assumed that the invocation worked, and Nancy now has like super magic powers instead of like normal magic powers. And of course, she immediately goes mad with power because she's able to walk on water and make the streetlights change as they're speeding down Ventura Boulevard or wherever they are. And about this time is when stuff starts going poorly for Sarah. For one, the like love spell on Chris is not seeming to wear off, and he's went from like, a doting kind of boyfriend to now he's just like an insane stalker, to where she is all he thinks about, and he's basically like up her asshole sideways 24/7. And the rest of the girls, at the behest of Nancy, being so mad with power, they've kind of become like stuck up bitches too. Like they're all too big for their own britches. Sarah even says like, Rochelle, you used to be nice. Bonnie, you used to be all like shy and kind, but now you're all acting like a bunch of stuck up sluts, pretty much. So because of this, Nancy decides to kick Sarah out of the coven, or the circle, or whatever you want to call it, because she doesn't want her descent like getting to the other ones in the group. So instead of this just leaving it at that, of course, Nancy has to take it a step farther. So Sarah goes on a date with Chris after he basically bugs her. And she's trying to explain all this shit to Chris. But of course, he's still dopey from the love spell, so he's just like, yeah, I totally understand, and I love you, and I want to get... but she's basically just like, you're fucking useless. I'm out of here. And he, like, kind of tries to rape her for a second. He, like, throws her on the ground and is going for his jeans when she, like, kicks him off and goes home. And of course, knowing this, Nancy, who apparently had been romantically involved with Chris prior to Sarah's arrival, has to, like, flex her dominance. So she goes and uses a glamour to disguise herself as Sarah and is about to have sex with Chris when the rest of the gang get there. And Nancy's so pissed off about this that she ends up, screaming at Chris and using her, like, telepathy to throw his ass out of a window. So obviously, Sarah tries to extricate herself from these people because she's frightened about what's going to happen. And instead of letting that be, Nancy decides that her and Bonnie and Rochelle are going to use their magical powers to convince Sarah to kill herself. So Sarah gets home, and she sees on the television that a flight that she believes her parents to be on has crashed and there were no survivors. And then there's a shit ton of creepy crawlies suddenly emerging, like, all over her house. Like, there are snakes, rats, spiders, roaches, other bugs. And it's, like, way too many of all the animals, like, more than would naturally be possible to happen in one house. And, of course, then she sees Nancy and the rest of the gang, who are floating for some reason, because they can. And they say that, like, nah, we're gonna make you kill yourself. But then Sarah decides to invoke the spirit of Manol herself. And since she's a good witch, unlike Nancy, it'll be like good shit instead of bad shit. So she uses her newfound power to scare off Bonnie and Rochelle. and then her and Nancy have like a magic girl cat fight of good and evil, in which Sarah ends up getting the upper hand and then doing some of the same shit that Nancy pulled back to her, where she like turns her fingers into snakes and there's like cockroaches crawling all over her. And essentially, Sarah is so powerful now that she like strips Nancy of her magic powers and ends up, I guess, incapacitating her. So at the end, Nancy ends up locked in an insane asylum, covered in cuts and bruises from their big magic fight, screaming to the orderlies about how she can fly and how she has magic powers, like a crazy person would say. And of course, Sarah and her family are leaving town, I guess going back to San Francisco. And Bonnie and Rochelle show up and be like, hey, we're sorry, we made you think your parents died, and then we tried to get you to kill yourself, and, we were being dicks, we're sorry. Sarah's like, yeah, okay. And they kind of ask her, like, well, do you still have powers? Sarah's like, I don't know, maybe. They're like, because apparently Bonnie and Rochelle have now had their magic privileges revoked too. They're like, whatever, you don't have powers either. And of course Sarah, like, makes a spontaneous thunderstorm appear and, like, lightning hit a tree branch and fall right in front of them. And so basically Sarah's flexing now, like, okay, you guys be good. Don't do any more of this bullshit or you'll end up like Nancy. And that's how the movie ends. So a quick story before I get into my thoughts. I have this really clear memory of watching this movie a few years ago, along with my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. Like, I was downstairs at my parents' house, I had it on Netflix or whatever, and me and her sat there and watched it. Now, according to her, she has never, until we watched it now, or until I brought it up, thinking that she would remember, she had never seen or heard of The Craft, and apparently The Craft has never been on Netflix. Or if it was on years before I would have watched it, or we would have watched it. So I have this weird false memory about me and her seeing it. And I know I had seen it before, but apparently she had never. So that's a weird Mandela effect. So just so that we could, like, kill the meme, because I've been talking about how I remember her seeing The Craft, but she does it for, like, a year and a half. So I went out and bought this DVD for the sole purpose of finally showing it to her. And after all the hype, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Overall, I still recommend it. It is a good movie. You get good performances out of all the lead characters, and it's kind of cool seeing Billy and Sydney from Scream, except a few years younger. Because of course, Neve Campbell and Skeet Ulrich would go on to be Sydney and Billy, the main couple in the first Scream movie. But it's a fun, like, time capsule movie. The style of dress, dialogue, editing, all that, even the soundtrack, it's all very, like, mid-90s vibe. So overall, I would recommend the movie. Give us a watch if you enjoy, like, supernatural movies, stuff about witchcraft. That's not really something that gets explored too often in, like, modern horror movies. That specific angle of it. That's going to be it for today's video. Hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And I will see y'all in the next one. Thank you.